Another great episode of PFREI. I'm your host, Precourt Bilal. Oh man, this is going to be a great interview off the bat. Before I press record, we were going back and forth, so you guys are in for a special treat. I got Mr. Patrick Precourt. Now, let me just read your bio real quick, Patrick, just to give everybody a little foundation of who I have on the call. So, Patrick is born and raised in Connecticut. He spent his early 20s working for their family home inspection company while living his passion, competing rugby. He did it here and abroad through other states. This is also when Patrick began his real estate investment career, invested in his first property when he was 25. I started at 25 also, so I'm right there with his passion also flowed over into teaching, and Patrick started teaching his niche in investment. By 2004, he was speaking from stage on a number of entrepreneurial topics, including real estate investment, personal development, as well as providing coaching and mentoring programs. Now, Patrick is a multi-talented entrepreneur and industry leader, personal development coaching, marketing, business development, speaking and influencing and mastering of sales and leadership. Now, that's one of the main reasons I brought him on as a guest, because you know, it's very important, and we were just having this conversation, and I'll get into that. But the first question I asked, let me not get off track, is why are you passionate for real estate investing?
Probably the simplest answer is because it's such a clear path to everything I want, which is ultimately freedom, right? I have a background in real estate, from the home inspection space to building and framing and remodeling, all that kind of stuff. So it has a neat little part of my soul to begin with. But I know of no other vehicle that provides such an abundance of wealth creation in such a short period of time than real estate. That's probably the simplest way to put it. When you look at the foundation of real estate, it's limited in production, meaning there's only so much real estate in our country or in this world, yet population keeps increasing. So fundamentally, it'll always increase in value. All we have to do is figure out how to carve out our tiny little piece, and we're good to go.
That's awesome. I appreciate that, man. So let's twist this a little bit. Usually the guests that I have on, everything about real estate, we're going to mix it up a little bit. I know you got a real estate background, but I really want to dig deep on this episode and talk about, self-image, rewiring your inner self and everything else, because it takes that, right? You can only grow to the extent, your business can only grow to the extent that you do. So let's talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people are focused on external factors. What do people think about them? How are they perceived in the community and everything else? And we just had a great conversation before the session. And I want you to share with people from, what you do as a life coach and real estate investor, coaching people. I'm a part of the Mastermind Collective Geniuses. You're one of the guys there who really set the stage and build that sense of urgency to really work on your inner self to become more. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why did you choose that lane? And let's give some value to our listeners.
So how will we start with a question? And I'll ask you this, and I'll ask our listeners this question, right? How many of us believe that the way we think affects our life?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. So how many of us wake up every morning and consciously create through thought, because we just said our thoughts affect our lives, constantly create a future that we really, really want? And the answer would be very few. And then I'd ask, well, why? Why don't we? And I would say fundamentally, because we don't really believe that we can create our future, even though you agree that the way we think affects the way we experience life, right? So let's start with that, right? That, okay, our thinking plays a role here, and we're in charge of the way we think. If you said, Pat, fundamentally, what's really the takeaway, the biggest thing that you do and how you affect people? I allow us to think differently and make different decisions, because those are the only two things that determine our outcomes. Follow me on this chain. I said, all right, do you believe that the way you feel affects the way you think?
Do I believe the way I feel affects the way I think? Well, that's the verse of it. Because you have to have, the feelings, actions, thoughts, actions.
Do you believe, have you ever woke up in a bad mood?
Yeah, for sure.
Did it affect your thinking?
Absolutely.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
The way you feel affects the way you think. That's an absolute fact right there, right? And stay on this trainer. All right. Do you also then agree that the way you think affects your decision making?
Absolutely.
Your decision making, your action taking?
Yes.
And your action taking is responsible for the way we experience life, the results we get in life. So you've connected the dots for me between feeling, emotion, and the way we experience life, right? Now, what if I told you that the way we feel is pre-wired? It's inside of us. We respond according to almost like a software inside. It's not the circumstance. The circumstance may be the trigger, but it's not what determines how we feel. And I'll use when our towers got attacked 9/11 as a perfect example. It was a circumstance. We all sat there in awe and watched the TV as our towers got attacked, right? We had no idea what was going on. But we didn't all feel the same way. Some people got very sad because they embraced that there's a loss of human life at the time. Some people got very scared because of the unknowns, right? The lack of certainty, and we had no idea what was going on, and fear overwhelmed them. Some people got angry because we could not comprehend that somebody's on our soil attacking us. And those are three very distinct emotions, feelings from one circumstance that then set off a series of thinking, decisions, actions, results, right? And the point in that example is to understand that it's not out here. It's in here that determines our outcome. Now let's bring it all the way back into our world of real estate education, wealth building through real estate, right? There's an ungodly amount of people who've developed a tremendous amount of wealth through real estate. I think you'd agree with that, right? That's why we're here in this game of real estate. But there's also probably for everyone that is successful and appreciates, financial freedom through real estate, there's probably 100 or even 1,000 that have tried it that don't. And the space that I feel is to create the bridge between those who do and those who don't. And this is something I've learned, right? Is that I can fill a room with 100 people or 1,000 people, give them the exact same instructions, information, knowledge, tools, systems, processes, resources, give them all exactly the same. And in that room of 1,000, right, less than 10% will take that and manifest it. And the other 90% won't. And given those circumstances, the question has got to be asked. If the 10% that did, and quite honestly, that's about the ratio of people who in the real estate education space as a large, right? If you take it all in, from seminars down to home study courses, down to coaching programs, you put it all in one big barrel, right? It averages about 10% actually carried over the finish line. Now, if 10% show that, yeah, guess what? The systems process, the teaching, the knowledge, expertise is dead on and it works perfectly well, what the hell happened to the other 90%? And that's the question that I've spent the last 10 years answering. That's where I've come out of the real estate education space, particularly, and into, all right, forget about giving you more knowledge and information. Let's focus on, let's take what you already have and succeed with that, right? And that's the space that I thrive in. So if you were to ask a question like, all right, so what's the difference? And I'll say, quite honestly, breaks down to different decision makings. Now, if we're going to just blanket statement, those who succeed make different decisions. Now, decisions, right? Every day we make thousands of them, literally thousands of them, which is way beyond what our brain is capable of making. We'll burn it up and shut it down by freaking 10 o'clock if we had to make all of these decisions, right? So our body being very efficient, our brain being very efficient, it creates habits, automated processes, so it doesn't have to think consciously. Now stick with me on this, especially your listeners, because this is important. This is why it's so difficult to change. 95%-ish, 92 to 95% of all of the decisions we make every single day are made out of habit, in the subconscious, not in the conscious. So effectively, we're just recreating and repeating our past, doing the same thing over and over and over again. So we get all this new information, but nothing's changing. And we refer to these as habits. Right? So now our habits are responsible for our daily decision making. So you say, well, what then? Well, now it takes a conversation away from the information, having to have more, right? In order to succeed, having to be smarter, having to have a better sales platform, having to know new investment strategies. That's not the answer. I've said this before, right? You've probably heard this repeat. I'm not the originator of these words, but a fool on fire will outperform a genius on ice all day long. It's true.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of geniuses on ice that they constantly just keep preparing and studying and more, right? But they're not making the right decisions, creating the right habits, produce the right outcomes. So if we could just connect the dots, build a bridge between what we know to do and actually doing it, then we'd be able to cross this bridge successfully and come to a desired outcome, right? So now you get into the space of our subconscious, the stuff that's inside. Now look at the subconscious as software that you've created through study, right? And through the learning process that we've decided serves us well. I'll give you an example of this just so we have a context to it. When I taught my 16-year-old daughter how to drive, right? She knew nothing about driving. She's 16 years old, never driven a car. I threw her in a kind of a tough vehicle to learn on. It's this old Land Rover I have that's right-hand drive and shift. So it's a manual right-hand drive, small diesel European vehicle, right? And I threw her in the car. I said, Sam, start the car. She turns over the key. The car lurches forward because it was in gear, scared the crap out of her. But that was the intention of it. Because I needed her to go from what we call an unconscious incompetence, she's unaware of what she doesn't know, into a state of conscious incompetence. And she immediately got there. But that opens up, when we're consciously aware of how little we know, it opens up our brain to learning. We open the gates to grow. Fantastic, right? And that's why, when we think we know it all, we've slammed those doors shut, right? So that as we go through this process of teaching and learning, repeating enough times with great focus and thought and concentration. Finally, we pull up to the stop sign and she's kind of, pressing the clutch, let off the gas, pressing the brake, come to the stop sign, car doesn't stall. It's like, Dad, I did it. I know how to drive. I'm like, you did do it, but you still don't know how to drive. So what do you mean? I'm like, don't worry about it. Let's just keep going, Sam, right? And the very next stop sign, I intentionally engaged her to interrupt the conscious pattern, the critical thinking that was required to execute. I said, Sam, what day do you graduate next year? Right as she was pulling up to the stop sign. That was a question she had to think about because she didn't graduate next year. It was a confusing question. Sure enough, the car stalled. I said, Sam, just because you know consciously how to do something does not mean you're competent at it until it becomes a habit. And a few weeks later of sticking with it, finally pulled up. I knew she had it. I engaged her. We're in a conversation. Pulls up, doesn't stall. Sam, now you know how to drive. And now this is not the end of learning. This is the beginning or the end of the beginning of the learning cycle. Boom. Because now the body knows as good as the mind, or at least as good as the mind, on how to execute, right? And where we fall shy in this whole learning spectrum is either we don't get to the conscious competent state, right? Where we can actually pull up to the stop sign, critically thinking stop, or we get there and we think we're there and we stop. We stop repetition and creating a habit out of it. And once we do that, any distraction, such as me interrupting that thought pattern for a moment, throws you off base. And in a real world, that means you're going to fail in the moment, right? Because it's not subconscious, it's not automatic. Now, and I know we're getting deep here, so if I run too long, just tell me, because we got to go one layer deeper, okay? All of these things I'm talking about, habits, decision-making, all come back to behavior, right? And when we're talking about wanting something we've never had, say one of your listeners said, man, this is all great, but all I want is financial freedom. That's all. It's real simple. You're making it complicated. So really, I'm not making it complicated. What I'm trying to do is shed some light on the shortest path to get what you want, and change your focus so that what you focus on actually moves you directly down a straight line to the outcome. So if what you want is financial freedom, and we could put a definition to that because it's a little different to everybody, right? Probably the simplest definition is when you have enough passive income and wealth to exceed your needs in living, right? That's all. It's simple. So you could just step back and you'll get by just fine, whatever. Well, in order to have that, which you've never had, right, you've got to do things that you've never done. And I think we'd all agree there, right? We've got to perform behaviors we never. Just like, if you want six-pack abs, right? Look at yourself. If you want that body to be different, you've got to do things you haven't done to get a different body. I think everybody will rationalize that as, well, that's just logical. Good. Well, in order to do something you've never done, and this is the part we forget about, we've got to become someone we've never been. And this is where we get this little game wrong. See, when we focus on the having part, that doesn't alter our behavior. That doesn't change us. When we focus on the who do I have to become in order to do what I have to do in order to have what I want to have, immediately our lives change. When we ask that question, who do I have to become? Do I have to become more disciplined, more focused, more committed, more grateful, whatever it may be? And we start focusing on the behaviors. When our behaviors change and they're in alignment with what we want, right? Guess what? Our actions change. When our actions change and they're in alignment with what we want, they move us towards that outcome. It's an inevitable outcome, right? When we put, we have a trio here, right? When we put in alignment a future place we want to be, right? An outcome, we make that harmonious with our actions, and make that harmonious with the way we feel. When we think, act, and feel in harmony, we create the future that we're gaining towards. It's impossible any other outcome. But when we just simply put up some picture board, some vision board, we put a whole bunch of stuff on that, but we don't really believe and feel that we're the person to deserve that, guess what? Ain't happening. We talk positively about something, but feel negatively about that something, guess what? We're going to end up with a negative result. Does this all kind of make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speak. Yeah. I love it. They need this. This is what the people need, So
let me ask you another question. Okay. And this is one of those brainwashing things from day one by our parents, and our parents meant well. It's not intentional, but it does have an effect on us. If I asked you next year, 2020, do you want to be good? Do you want to be better? Or do you want to be best? What would be your default answer that everybody would say the same?
Best.
Best. Of course you want to be best, right? Because our parents told us that's, if all we have to do is do our best and we're good. But what is our best? Think about this for a second. Our best is as far as we've come. So if we're going to stick to our best, we're agreeing that we ain't going any further. Yep. We're going to come as far as we've come. And that's the creation of a comfort zone. We're going to go to the boundaries. We're going to do our best. We ain't going over the boundaries, right? The real answer to that is every day, all we want is to be better than we were the day before. So forget about this. I'm going to do my best. No, you got to be better than your best every day. Because that was yesterday, and that was okay yesterday. Unless you're telling me that you're 100% satisfied in all of your life right now, in your relationships with your spouse and friends and kids, within your bank accounts, in your business, as a leader, as an influencer. If you're okay with all that, sure, stay in your comfort zone. It's still going to end up disastrous, but fine, right? The goal every day is to be better. But in order to be better, it means we've got to change. In order to change, we've got to become someone different every single day. That all kind of makes sense?
I'm fired up, man. I'm fired up.
So here's the magic.
This is really good, though. This is really good. That's very important, between best and better. Because I actually telling my son every day when I drop out of school, do your best today. Do your best today. Instead of saying do better than yesterday. So this is something I definitely just learned, and I definitely appreciate that. It's valuable information because it rewires the subconscious, which ultimately comes down to the conscious, right? And that's a part of what you were saying. To create better habits, you have to subconsciously rewire yourself so in the conscious it happens habitually.
Yeah. So here's a little tip, because you could start using these tools every day, right? So the neat thing about the best part is it is the one thing, the dichotomy between best and better. It's the one thing that's we want every single day as human beings. It's in our nature always to want to feel better. That's all we want, right? So now, knowing that that's what everybody wants, I also know that if every time I see you, if I can make you feel better, guess what, man? You and I are going to have a very, very long, prosperous relationship together. It's the essence of charisma, right?
Yes.
If you want to create habits and gain authority around other people, just allow them to feel better in your presence. So I'll give you an example, right? We own a gym, a fitness center. And, if you walk in, it looks and feels like any other gym. It's not. It's completely different because of the culture and the code that we operate in our gym. But our mission statement is kind of the anchor. Our mission statement is very simple, right? It says, provide an outstanding experience for every one of our clients every time they walk through our doors. Now, it's done that way very specifically, and here's why. I know, because our gym is anchored in results. And the only way I can guarantee you results is to have, you have to show up often, and so I can influence you in getting those results. And we're very good at that. But if you don't show up, my influence is gone. But I know you'll make a habit of showing up if I give you exactly what you want deep down inside, and that's to feel better. So if I provide an outstanding experience, every single time you show up, you're going to feel better every single time you show up. You're going to make a habit out of showing up. Boom, I got you. Now I can influence you to get the results that you and I agreed to in the very beginning. Not about the equipment. I don't need any better equipment. As a matter of fact, we take it away. I have 4 cardio machines in a 15,000 square foot fitness center. It ain't about the equipment, right? Now, if you take this back to the world of real estate, right? We always think it's about the equipment, right? We don't realize that, no, it has nothing to do with the equipment, right? It has to do with us becoming someone different.
Absolutely. Wow, this is powerful stuff, man. Definitely appreciate you coming on and adding value to the listeners. Now, as we all know, we're all human. We all have challenges. And one of the questions I always ask the guests is, what are the challenges that you face, and what are some of the habits, since that's the topic, that you create constantly to overcome those challenges? We all have challenges. So that's a question for you. Like, we know that you're a life coach, that you inspire people, you add value to people, but you have some challenges you go through, I'm sure. And how do you overcome that? Whether it's real estate related, life related, we'll close out with that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm married 26 years. I have 3 awesome kids. They're coming up through the teens. So I dedicate a lot of my time, energy, and effort to kids, right? Because they're
That's
growing
the challenge.
Huh?
I'm going through that.
So then you know, how old are your kids?
17 and 11.
Okay, so you're right in that same space. So I got a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and Danny's 14 years old, right?
Wow.
They're growing up in a period of time that you and I didn't grow up through, man, which means we are not properly prepared to parent them, which means we got to constantly stay out in front of this, right? With that said, okay, as it relates to kids, I know I have not, when you ask people their why, right? I'd say there's 2 pieces to your why. One of them is your priority. That's your family. That's your wife. That's your kids, right? The other one is your greater responsibility, and that's the impact that you make on this earth. That's how you affect the greater humanity at large, right? And we have to understand that we're not just here for our immediate loved ones. We're given all these God-given innate skills and talents to be much bigger than that. It'd be actually very selfish to think we're given such unique awesomeness that it should just be spent on our family. We have a bigger reason for that. And if everybody rolled around this world like that, the world would never become a better place, right? So in my shaping of this, Our priority is our family. That's the half of our why. Our greater responsibility is to make the most we can with what we've been given and leave as big a dent on this earth as we possibly can. So my challenge then is staying out in front of these kids and being able to influence them, provide the guidance they need in a wild, wild west out there right now, which it absolutely is, right? Which means I got to somehow think like a 16-year-old, have the wisdom of 52-year-old, and constantly kind of go out in front and study what's going on in their world and how do we relate the effect of social media, the psychology of social media on these, and understand the difference between little boys and little girls, because it is completely different how this stuff affects them. And that's one of my greater challenges. And that would wrap back around to the idea of emotions, right? Affecting what we do. And of course, what we do changes the way we experience life. And I'll wrap it up on this. Say, if there's one thing that our listeners wanted to take away from this today, would be appreciate that the way we feel affects the way we think, affects the way we experience life. Let's start taking control of it. Let's stop letting outside circumstance trigger internal emotions and determine the life we experience. Let's stop, think about what we're thinking about, appreciate that we're human, which is that superpower skill to do that. Change the thought to change the emotion, which triggers a new thought, new decision, new action, and the outcomes that we really want in this world.
Wow. This is awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on and, coming here and adding value to the listeners. Patrick Precourt. Oh, man. Looking forward to catching up with you in San Diego this week, my brother. Spending some good time there at the event. And another great episode of PFREI, Passion for Real Estate Investments. Catch us on YouTube, catch us on Instagram. Give you the opportunity to plug where people can see your site. I know it's patrickprecourt.com.
Perfect.
Other stuff going on. If you give you the opportunity to plug that real quick. People can find
that's it. patrickprecourt.com, and you can find out about it. I give a ton of free content away. Just plug in, man. That's all.
Awesome. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.